Matt, how do you think Pennsylvania is shaping up?
Well, I think Pennsylvania is the tipping point state, Hugh. It's going to be the state that determines the election. I think right now it's an extremely close race, but with a slight Trump advantage when you look at the polls. And I think that's important because amidst all of this positive media coverage for Kamala Harris, I just have to keep reminding people forget about what she says or what the media says and look at what she does. Look at her actual choices that she's been making since she became the presumptive Democratic nominee. And one of those critical choices was the rejection of Josh Shapiro to be her president running mate in favor of Tim Walz, who thinks that socialism is neighborliness. And I think that could be a critical mistake if the Trump campaign and if President Trump really drive home not just her rejection of Shapiro on the basis of his pro Israel views, but also the fact that Kamala Harris has a long record of wanting to ban fracking and very much wanting to end carbon based energy production in this country. So, slight Trump advantage, and I think one that the Trump campaign, if they're skillful, can exploit.
Well, it also is the focus of where every message should be sent and every ad spent. When we get to fracking, in Axios this morning, I have a big question, a little question. Axios this morning says Kamala's changed her position on fracking, and she wants everyone to know that. And that's in Axios. For the benefit of our audience, how much does the Washington mini cottage industry of gossip letters, and that's what they are, Axios, Politico, Punchbowl, I read them, you read them, everybody reads them. I'm not dismissing the fact that they matter a lot inside the Beltway, but do they actually reflect the reality of anywhere? I just spent 4 days in Warren, Ohio, and nobody reads Politico or Axios or Punchbowl in Warren, Ohio. It's a
Isn't it
DC
great?
thing. Do they distort? Did they distort our understanding of what's going on in the country?
I think they do. I mean, they're basically act these newsletters as a bulletin board for the Washington political class. And so it's important for the political class to read, but it's not necessarily tied to anything that's happening outside the Beltway. I will say this, Hugh, all of these stories we've been reading and listening to about how Kamala Harris is abandoning her positions, her past positions, her on record positions. We never hear from her, and they kind of remind me of notes passed in the classroom when they say, oh, Jill has a crush on you, but she won't say, she's too afraid to say so herself, right? And you don't really know the truth until you hear from the actual subject, from the actual individual. And until we hear what Kamala Harris's position is on energy, and it's not just fracking, it's a whole slate of energy policies on Israel, on guns, which will be very important in this election. People aren't paying attention to it, but guns and Second Amendment rights helped drive Trump's surprise victory in 2016. I think that issue could play a role in this election as well. Until we hear about all of these things from Kamala Harris, it might as well just be passing notes across the classroom in, algebra 2.
So, what Axios wrote this morning, I want to quote it. Quote, a big part of the Harris plan is to unapologetically change some of her more liberal positions and claim her White House experience helped change her mind. Yes, when she was running for president in 2019, she was against fracking, for decriminalizing illegal border crossings, and for single payer health care, Medicare for all. And my comment on Axios, sure, right. Everyone will believe her. Does anyone believe Kamala Harris when she makes one of these changes?
Well, people who know her don't believe her, Hugh. The real issue here in these final weeks of the campaign is that many Americans really don't know Kamala Harris. They may be aware that she's been the vice president, but vice presidents don't really get a lot of publicity. Harris has shied away from publicity for much of the past 4 years because her rollout was so disastrous. And so it's a real question of who will people know as Kamala Harris in the coming weeks? Will they know the actual Kamala Harris, who is a far left California Democrat coming up through the San Francisco political machine, basically picked by Nancy Pelosi to be the Democratic nominee in 2024? A person who has had all of these positions, whether it's on immigration, wanting to decriminalize border crossings, whether it's on the Green New Deal, whether it's on Medicare for all and abolishing private health insurance. And the way in which she supported that position in 2020, 2019 was kind of almost lackadaisical. Like she really, really cares. She's like, "Oh, we got to get rid of all this. Forget about it. Let's move on." Do we understand that Kamala Harris as the person who could be our president next year, or do we understand this media creation that is coming out in the next couple of days saying, "Hey, forget about everything you've heard. I'm actually now just a Biden Democrat. I'm in the center of the party. I'm going to lead us to a bright new future." It's up to the Trump campaign and it's up to President Trump to remind the American people that no matter what she says, if Kamala Harris is elected in November, we are going to get that far left Democrat in the Oval Office. Of this,
So
I have
Matt,
no doubt.
when I post on X about upcoming guests, I put a little note on there. I pointed out you're 43 years old. Like me, you're a civilian with family who have served in the military and who have deployed. You understand what it's like to be a member of a family where someone deploys. I don't want to denigrate Tim Walz's service because right now my son-in-law's deployed. And it's a pain in the neck for the whole family and it's dangerous for him. The question is, does Tim Walz, has he helped her or hurt her, or does he not matter at all with it's not really stolen valor. It's more like gun decking. That's a term of art that I learned from my brother-in-law the other day in the military. And he wasn't attributing it to Tim Walz. He was just saying gun decking is when you expand your service to claim that you were places you weren't or to somehow allow people to believe more about you. Has Tim Walz helped her or hurt her?
I think on balance, Walls has hurt Kamala Harris slightly. And I think the reason he's hurt her, Hugh, is it's apparent that Walls was not properly vetted. When you come out of the gate and immediately you have to answer questions about how you have represented your service in the past, when you come out of the gate and immediately people start raising issues of how you responded to the George Floyd riots in 2020 and how you were too late to send in the National Guard. When people begin raising the question of how you responded to COVID and how you were very autocratic in your decisions to shut down businesses, to shut down religious gatherings and participations, and then making exceptions, of course, for the racial protests. All of these things, I think, have kind of raised doubts about Kamala Harris's capacity to make smart decisions, and also raises the question of what sort of administration would the Harris Walls administration be? Would it be some kind of centrist administration like Kamala Harris is pretending right now? Or would it be a pretty far left administration? Um,
Oh,
or
Matt, it's
some, and
3,000
I think it
people.
would be the latter. Yeah,
I think it would be significantly to the left of the Biden administration. Significantly,
right.
because of the 3,000 people would come along. Do you agree with me on that? Significantly to the left of the Biden people.
I think we can say that safely. And I would also add too on the vetting question, just on Walls. I think there's more to come out, Hugh, on his relationship with the PRC and the fact that he's taken
Oh,
all of
yes.
these trips to China and his relationship with Chinese officials. And his, he's been critical in some cases, but he's also been very open to better relations with China in the past. There's a lot there that will be reported and uncovered that it's clear the Harris campaign just didn't think through when they made that choice for VP.
I want to go back to inflation, Matt. Food prices are up on average more than 20% across the United States. Some places more, some items more. The only way to bring down food prices is energy production. I keep trying to tell this to everybody. The secret to lowering food costs is to decrease the cost of producing the food. The only way you can do that is to drive down the cost of energy. The only way you can drive down the cost of energy with energy production. Do voters get that? Do the people in Pennsylvania understand who have been hurt by inflation? The grocery cart is Donald Trump's best friend. But do people understand he can actually reduce the cost of food by increasing the production of energy?
Well, I think in a place like Pennsylvania, Hugh, where energy is so critical to the local economy, they absolutely do get it. And so making that connection between energy supplies and food prices will be very important for the Trump campaign. I would say, too, another way we can reduce inflation is by cutting government spending. Spending has been out of control. It was Kamala Harris who cast the deciding vote on Biden's spending binge in 2021. If the Trump campaign and President Trump were to embrace, as they already have, a full spectrum energy policy and really drive that home, I think it worked to their advantage in Pennsylvania. But I'd also like them to talk more about this outrageous deficit that we have, this outrageous national debt, $35 trillion, the fact that interest on the debt is now higher than our total defense spending, which is hundreds of billions of dollars. We're kind of spiraling toward a financial reckoning here. And I think Trump could use that issue as well, not only to strengthen his advantage on the economy and inflation, but really set the scene for a Trump agenda in the coming year.
How ought Team Trump to approach this? Because I think it is not unlike, I was talking with Larry Kudlow on his program yesterday about crime in the 1988 election. People were afraid of Dukakis being soft on crime. Uh, Immigration is to 2024 as crime was to 1988. The driver. How does it? How does the Trump campaign deal with this without? It's not racist. It's just a problem. It's an enormous cost on every community into which migrants are placed.
Look, it's a big issue. It's an issue no matter where you are or who you are. People think that the southern border is broken. There's been a crisis. And because of the crisis on the southern border now for 3 years, many people, again, of all ethnicities, all races, are beginning to question how much legal immigration we need in the United States. Look, this is Donald Trump's signature issue. It's the issue that he has made the centerpiece of his political identity since 2015. He needs to campaign on it. He needs to say, we established a solid border in the Trump administration, and we can do it again.
Matt, I thought that the sit down with Elon Musk went very, very well. And I played most of it yesterday on the program. I don't let other people interpret for me. But one thing the former president never does is stick the point, stick the dismount, to use the terms of Olympic. He never connects the dots up. He says what the problem is. I can speak Trump, and you can speak Trump. We know what he's trying to do. Will that work on the debate stage in 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
It will be dicey, Hugh. I mean, he's going to have to stick the landing on the debate stage. I think the September 10th debate is going to be very important. You know, going into this election, I'd always been skeptical of presidential debates mattering, but they definitely mattered this year. You had the most consequential presidential debate in history on June 27th, resulting in Biden's withdrawal from the race, just a historic act. And that sets up the September 10th debate to be equally important because this will be, I think, the real moment that Donald Trump has to kind of say, this is an illusion, this Kamala Harris you've been hearing about, this Kamala Harris that you heard from at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. It's a creation of the media and of the Democratic Party. And it's up to Trump to use those 90 minutes, to use that debate time to say, look, she is a far left Democrat no matter what she says, and her administration will be to the left of the Biden administration, which has already been one of the most left wing administrations in American history. Can the country survive that? If he makes that case, I think he can make this election very competitive, and I think his advantage will continue. But it's up to him, and whether he sticks the landing, he's done it before. I think he can do it again.
All right, my last question isn't a question, it's a comment. Never take a week off of the commentary podcast again. I'm really just saying, just don't do that in the middle of an election. What is wrong with you guys? I know vacations are important, but really, never do that again, Matt Continetti. Thank you for joining me this morning. What, do you have any excuse? Is there any?
I'll
What's
put
the
it. I'll
explanation
send
here?
it up. I'll send your memo up the a ladder, and I'll put it in the suggestion box queue. You know, I don't make these decisions, but
Honest to
I understand
goodness.
what you say. I'm passing the buck here.
All right, Matt, good to talk to you. Talk to you next week. Continetti on X, America. Continetti on X. Stay tuned.